Alright, hello once again, this is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going through a series of video presentations based on the docs.microsoft.com Getting Started with MVC5 series. And I'm in the Getting Started with ASP.NET MVC5. I'm up to the 7th presentation, so far I've done the Getting Started, adding a controller, adding a view, adding a model, creating a connection string, and working with SQL Server Local DB, and I just completed the accessing your model's data from a controller. So that brings us to 7 of 11. So what's left is examining the edit methods in edit view, adding search, adding a new field, adding validation, and examining details and detail methods. So we're doing those right now, and I'm on the examining the edit methods and edit view. So as mentioned right here, in this section, what we'll do is examine the generated edit action methods and views for the movie controller. But first it says we'll take a short diversion to make the release date look better. Well, what does that mean? What that means is that right now with the release date, it's showing that it's, it was released at midnight basically. So what we want to do is we don't need the time in there. So open the models movie.cs file. Right here. And we're told to start making some changes. We need this using statement here. Now notice, because this is the key word, data annotations. We're going to start to annotate. And what annotations will allow us to do are two things. First, it's going to allow us to make things look better aesthetically. You're going to see that right away. All right. The second thing it's going to allow us to do is it's going to help us with validation. And we'll see that as we go on in here. So after the using system, right there, we'll add that. There we go. All right, now notice it's gray because we're not using it in our code right now. So it's telling us that's an unnecessary directive. We'll use it in just a moment. All right, so we want to go back to here, and we want to add all of this stuff right here. ID title, so we want to put this right up above the release date. And the author actually puts a blank line there. It doesn't matter really one way or the other whether or not we do that. But now notice it's not gray anymore because these are data annotations that we're using. So what are we doing in here? We're letting it know that it's of type date. We're letting it know that for the title, instead of saying release date, where we run the two words together, now it'll say release space date. And we're also telling it the format that we want the date to have, and we're telling it to apply that format. I think we need a semicolon right there. Well, it's saying identifier expected. I think not a semicolon, but a bracket there. Is that right? There we go. For some reason that didn't copy over. We can also, it says, make the data culture specific. So we've got this name equal release date and the data type. I think we put those both in already, did we not? Release date, date equal data type. We've got the format here, the format string, but instead of saying all this, if we wanted to, we could just put in here a D, like that. That's making it date culture specific, all right? I believe either one would work just fine, the one we had previously or this one. Now, in the next tutorial, one of the later tutorials, let's say, we're going to talk about data annotations in more specifics. All right, so see, this is actually a link worth clicking on. I'm going to open it up in a new tab. And the reason for that is there are a boatload of annotations that you can set up. All right, so you can make sure that fields are numeric, that they fall within a certain range, etc. All right, now, as it says, the display specifies what to display for the name of the field. So that's release date as one word, as 2 words, as opposed to 1 word, which is what it is now. The data type, as it says in here, specifies the type of data. It's letting us know that it's a date, so not to display the time information. The display format, as it says, is needed for a bug in Chrome that renders date formats incorrectly. Now, when we run it, we should, all right, this should look at least a little bit nicer. Let's find out. So I always like to do a save all first. And let's run this. Now it looks like it's going back again to the home page. So it's going, we're going to have to change this, of course, and have it go to the movies controller. It's funny, it's taking a while to load, but I really don't have, I don't think, I don't have that much stuff. I don't have that much stuff open right now. So I'm not sure why it's taking that long to load. There we go. All right, now we want to go and browse or peruse our way over to movies. And this is going to be a little bit hard to see, I believe. All right. When the movies come up on here, if the movies come up on here, wow, that is really, really taking a long time. The problem is when I use Camtasia like this and I am in the middle of producing the previous thing that we were working on, the problem that you get with that, all right, the problem that you get with that is the fact that it really and truly takes a long time, and the production protocol, whatever you want to call it, it's very memory intensive. So the author says if we take our mouse and put it over edit, we look way down here in the bottom corner, it tells you movie/edit/ and then the number. Now I'm going to change mine because they've got different ones in here. We don't have to do this, but they've got Rio Bravo. Notice how the release date changed here. See that? 2/16/1959. This would be a Western. and it's $3.99. Let's save. We've now got that one, so let's edit this one as well. They want this to be Ghostbusters 1/1/1994 comedy and $7.99. Again, I didn't have to do this, but now mine is in jive with what's in the handout there on page 2. All right. So that edit link that we saw when we put our mouse here says 3, it says 2, it says 1. That was generated by the HTML action link within the views movies index.cshtml file. All right, let's stop the run here and look at that. All right, so we want to go into views. Movies, and then in the index.cshtml file. There's the edit right there. This HTML action link that you see right there, it's what's referred to as a helper method. All right. The action link makes it easy to dynamically generate HTML hyperlinks that link to the associated action methods on the controller. All right. The first argument that's there is the link text. So that's edit. All right. The second argument is the name of the action method, which in this case, in fact, in all three of these cases, is the same thing. The final argument that's right here is what's known as an anonymous object. It generates the route. All right, so it's going to be telling us what the particular ID is. The route that we saw in here, all right, when we put our mouse here, the route that comes in down here, again, it is localhost : port number / movie / edit / 3 in this case. All right, that's basically the whole thing that's set up. And this mapping that is taking place in here to do this, remember, that was back in our app start, and we looked at route config. We looked at this a little bit earlier. All right. It's also possible for us to come in here and do something like this. All right, notice we're coming in here, we're saying movies. Then at the end of movies, we're going to put in here /edit $ID =2. Now I'm going to hit enter, and if I did it right, it should bring Rio Bravo up, and it should bring it up in edit mode. It says the site cannot be reached. Oh, I'm surprised, because that is basically the same path that we're working with right there. It doesn't like it though. And it shouldn't, we should not have to put the, no, this localhost, movies, edit $ID equals. And none of this stuff should even be case sensitive. I should be able to say edit $ID =2, and I'm getting that error. What I'm wondering is if I put in here just an edit /2, doesn't like that either. Oh, no, it's saying we can't reach that either. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's take a look at. Let's bring our movies up. Oh, I think I know why. It's because I stopped the run here, so I've got to run it again. There we go. You know, the answer is always in the code someplace. So let's bring this up again. Close this one. We're running the program now where we should be. There it's running. All right, once this comes up, I'm going to try this one more time just to see and verify that what's shown in the article works. /movies/edit ID equal 2. Now, if it works, it should bring up Rio Bravo, and it should bring it up in edit mode. It's thinking about it. Here we go. All right. So that's page 5 of the handout, or the associate handout if you're interested. Okay. It says open the movies controller. Let's stop the run here. Sorry about that. That's the production of the previous document. This should work a little faster now because it is not technically running Camtasia in production mode. So hopefully it'll run a little faster. All right. So the author says here, and we just did all this stuff. Open the movies controller. The 2 edit action methods are shown below. Stop the run here. Open the movies controller. Again, I like to be closing some of this stuff when I can, just because it makes it a little easier to maneuver our way around here, okay? All right. The 2 edit action methods are shown below. Okay. There's the first one. There's the second one. All right. Now, what we're seeing for the first time, not in this one, but down here, we're seeing yet another data annotation here. Okay? What's happening is this second edit action is being preceded by the HTTP post attribute. This specifies that it's only for post requests. Remember the difference between a get and a post. A get does not allow us to change information, only display information, where a post does allow us to change the information. And notice the comment there, to protect from overposting attacks. What the author is saying is you want to make sure you're doing the best you can to make sure that bad data does not get into the system. We could apply this stuff to the one up above, which is get, and that's what it defaults to here. We could have put HTTP get up here, okay? That's the default, so we didn't have to do so. Later on, I think we'll start putting those in. And they do mention here, they talk about this bind attribute right there. Notice if I put my mouse there, it says bind attribute dot bind attribute. Represents an attribute that is used to provide details about how model binding to a parameter should occur. Well, that's as, easy to understand as, no, it's not. All right, so we can come here if we want, and there, click on there, and we'll get some information about the bind attribute. As it says, it's a security method that keeps hackers from overposting data to your model. You should only include properties in the bind method that you may want to change. If you want to hear more about overposting, you can read here. There is just not enough time to go through all of these hyperlinks. Sorry about that. It just won't work. So this validate anti-forgery attribute, it's used to prevent forgery of a request. So in other words, what we don't want to have happen is we don't want a customer of our video place. We're the administrator. But if somebody logs in as a customer, we don't want them, for example, to be able to change the price. All right, to be able to change the price of a movie. Okay. Now, give you an example. I'm going to go off script here just for a second and talk about something that I read. This was many years ago. I was listening to an online webinar. It wasn't something I read, it was something I saw. So I was listening to an online webinar, and the gentleman who was making the presentation, it was out of San Francisco, and he mentioned that the night before the presentation, he needed to go onto the internet. He was creating the presentation that he was going to be giving, and he wanted to check out a few things. And he noticed, I mean, today, you get Wi-Fi, etc., but this was several years ago, so they wanted $19.99 to connect up to the internet. But he noticed that when they did all this stuff that normally would be done inside of a post, so you couldn't see that information, it was done as a get, which meant that the information, the $19.99, was actually shown as part of the query string. So what he did, just to see whether or not he could do it, was he changed the $19.99 to $0.99. So instead of paying $19.99 for his internet privileges, he was going to pay 99 cents. Then he went downstairs to the lobby. This is the gentleman talking because he was explaining what was going on there. And he asked if he could have a copy of his bill. And he even mentioned how they said, "Are you unhappy? Are you leaving?" And he said, "No, I just want to see it for my records." So he said the gentleman looked a little bit suspicious, printed it out, quickly scanned it, and gave it back to him. And lo and behold, on the bill, it said that his internet was 99 cents. So you don't want to take things in a get where they will appear on the query string. That should be for information that is not personal, and that should be for information that you're not going to change. The advantage of using GET requests is they can be bookmarked, whereas posts cannot be bookmarked. But they provide an extra level of security because they take the information and, for lack of better words, kind of bury it within the header. All right, so it's harder to dig that information out. Now it says here, the anti-forgery attribute is used to prevent forgery of a request and is paired in the edit view file, so we could go into the edit if we wanted to. So it's trying to make sure you don't put anything illegal in. As it says here, it generates a hidden form anti-forgery token. This is way above my pay grade, so I understand conceptually what's happening, but I've never done anything with it. All right. It says here, the following model shows the edit view that was generated by the scaffolding system. And it's showing this in here. It says, notice how the view template has an @models MVC models movie statement at the top that specifies that the view expects the model for the view template to be of type movie, which would make sense. The scaffold code uses a lot of the HTML helper methods to make this easier. For instance, you'll notice the label for to display the name of the field. The editor for, which renders an HTML input element. And the message for, which displays any validation messages associated with that property. All right. So we're told to run the application right here. Maybe it's here. Well, I'm getting a little perplexed here. Oh, it's down here. All right. So run the application and navigate to the movie's URL. So let's just follow their instructions here. All right. So we're going to come in here. We're going to run the application. Probably should have saved first. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. And we're going to navigate to the movie's URL here. Okay. And after we do that, we're supposed to click an edit link. All right, we've been working with Rio Bravo, so we'll go to that one. In the browser, view the source for the page. So right mouse click and choose View Page Source. The HTML for the form element is shown in here. The input elements are in HTML form element. They're in an HTML form element. The action attribute is set to post. All right. Right back to, in this case, where we are, because we're on the second one. The form data is posted to the server when the save button is clicked. All right, let's stop that. And I don't think we'll need to be running this right now. So I'm going to stop the run. And I'm going to jump back to the document here. Whoops, to our document. There we go. All right, processing the post request. It says the following listing shows the HTTP post version of the edit action method. So we could look here, or we could go back to our code. All right. Again, that validate anti-forgery token validates an XSRF, which is a cross-site scripting type of thing. All right, token generated by the anti-forgery. The bottom line is this. All right, I used to do much more work with this, but the biggest problem that faces companies are people trying to break into their websites and do harm, whatever that harm may be. Some people like to see if they can get into a website, and if they can, they might, change the logo or put a dirty message or whatever. But think about it. If I was able to get into Amazon's website, and let's say that I could change the price of, I don't know, all of the DVDs that were in there, so that instead of the price they currently were, I made them 90% cheaper. Well, the people at Amazon wouldn't be very happy with me because they'd be losing a lot of money. Now, they do mention here the ASP.NET MVC model binder takes the posted form values and creates a movie object that's passed to the movie parameter. You'll notice the model_state.isValid method is used to verify that the data submitted in the form can be used to modify a movie object. In other words, if we came in and tried to put in something that was invalid, it should keep it from being written. All right. If the data is valid, the movie data is saved to the movie's collection, not to the database yet. All right, but it's saved to the DB movie DB context instance. Then when we call the save change method of movie DB context, then it's saved back to the database. Then we're redirected back to our index page for the movie's controller so we can see the changes that were just made. As soon as the client-side validation determines the values are not valid, we get an error message. Let's see if we can do that. So So we're going to run this again. Let's go ahead and we'll go over to movies and we'll try to put in a new movie. All right, so I'm going to do a create new, and I'm purposely going to put mistakes in here. Now I should be able to leave these all blank, but we'll see. I'm just going to click create. So notice what I get. The release date field is required and the price field is required. So let's come into here. Notice I'm trying to type in AA. It won't let me. I can only put in numbers. I tried to put in 22 there. It wouldn't let me. All right. Now, it's probably going to take that in the past. All right. In the year 22. Genre, I don't have to put in anything. Hello. Price, what if I put in -8.88 or 99? All right. Create. It's breaking. It's saying when I tried to save these changes, there was something in there that it didn't like. So we will end up fixing this when we talk about the data annotations in just a bit. Now, the author mentions here if you disable JavaScript, you won't have any client-side validation, but the server still will detect that the stuff was invalid and it'll still give the error message. You should not ever disable JavaScript because, why make the server go through and do validation where the client could already validate it and know that it's wrong? All right. This validation message for helper in the edit.cshtml view template takes care of displaying an appropriate error message. You already saw these. And they mention here in the handout, it says that virtually all of the HTTP GET methods follow a similar pattern. They get a movie object or a list of objects and pass the model to the view. The create method passes an empty movie object to the create view. All the methods that create, edit, delete, or modify do so in the post overload. All right, so for the CRUD, the C for create, the U for update, which is called edit here, or the D for delete, will all have to use this overloaded HTTP post method. The R for read does not. That uses the get. Modifying data in a get is a security risk. If you want to know more about that, you can read this. Modifying data in a get also violates HTTP best practices. In other words, you shouldn't do it. It says if you are using a US English computer, you can skip this section and go to the next tutorial. All right. But what they talk about here is if we want to do this, all right, it says to support jQuery validation for non-English locales. Notice that some of them use a comma for a decimal point. You must include globalize.js. And I will very quickly run through a couple of these steps here with you. I don't know how much of this I'm going to go through, but we'll see it. Just so you can see some of the stuff that's in here. What do I mean? Well, there's two ways that you can get to what's called the NuGet Package Manager in here. You can right mouse click on the name of your project and choose Manage NuGet Packages. Or you can go down to, Tools? And you can go to NuGet Packet Manager. All right? And notice Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. So you can do it either way. I just have always done it this way. I don't know why, but I just have. Now I'm trying to, I just want to be sure here, so if I do it the other way, where I come down under Tools, and I say NuGet Package Manager, Manage for Solution, yeah, it's the same thing. All right, it says on the left pane, choose Online, which I don't see here. All right, I think we can choose the installed. This is, again, a little bit old. It says in the search installed packages, enter here Globalize, right there. Now it says no packages found. If I go to Browse and I have Globalize, then you see there's a bunch of Globalize right there that we can choose from. So I could just choose, is there one just called Globalize? Well, here it says a JavaScript library. It's either jQuery validation Globalize or it's jQuery Globalize. Now I'm looking at the number of downloads, 140,904. So my guess is it's this one right here. All right. So if I did want to install it right now, I could just tell it to install it. Okay. I'm not going to run through that, but again, I could. And the author says if you don't want to repeat this code in every edit view, you can move it to the layout file. All right, I'm just going to close this. I don't see the need to do this. To me, it's code bloat. We are using a US computer, so I don't see the need for actually putting that in. All right, you may or may not agree with what I just said, but I showed you this right here. I showed you two ways to get to the package manager, etc. All right, so the author says here, and this is the bottom of page 16 of the article, to avoid repeating this code in every field, you can move it to the layout file. To optimize the script download, you can see the author's tutorial. Now, bundling and minification is cool. What bundling allows you to do is to combine a lot of stuff together into a bundle. Minification basically is saying for things like jQuery, you shouldn't be using, for example, like jQuery.js. You should be using jQuery.min.js. You should be using minified versions. Any file that you are not going to be changing that exists, you really should use the minified version whenever possible. All right. Why? Well, it's going to result in your files being smaller, so they'll load faster. All right. Finally, the author says here on the bottom of page 16, going to the top of page 17, as a temporary fix, if you can't get validation working in your locale, you can force the computer to use US English, or you can disable JavaScript in the browser. To force the computer to use US English, you can add a globalization element to the project's root web.config file. And they show this right here. That seems a little bit extreme, but I suppose if you have no other choice, maybe that's what you'd have to do. All right. That pretty much finishes our 7th of 11 here, our examining the edit methods and the edit view. So when we come back in just a couple minutes, we will go to part 8, which is search capabilities. All right. So we are now here, and as always, I like to run through what we're doing. So I will be back with that shortly.